Hello, and welcome to another Arizona Hip Historian Virtual Happy Hour Tour. That's a lot to say, and we're excited about it. I am Brenda Holt with the Arizona State Office of AARP. We are the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 million members across the nation, and approximately 900,000 right here in Arizona, we work to strengthen our communities and we advocate for what matters most to our families: health security, financial stability, personal fulfillment, healthy living, just to name a few. During the month of November, we are going to be covering caregiving. We're here to help you navigate planning for you and your loved ones' future care. Don't leave decisions around your home, your health, and your finances to someone else. You want to be in the driver's seat. So visit us for more resources and information at aarp.org/caregiving or aarp.org/Arizona. We hope you enjoy these weekly sessions, and we want to say to you, Happy Thanksgiving.
Ladies and gentlemen, wide folk, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello and good evening. Oh my gosh, I want to welcome you all to Arizona History Happy Hour. Thank you so much for joining us on Thanksgiving Eve. I hope you're all getting ready for an amazing Thanksgiving. And, sometimes just quiet time is good. But tonight's not going to be a quiet night at all because we have so much fun. And, oh my gosh, just wait till you see what all is going to happen tonight. Okay, so I know Frank is out there watching, probably on LinkedIn. So thank you all so much for joining on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and all those social medias that we're on. So happy you can be here on November 23rd. So, so if we take a look at some Arizona history, so back in 1923, we were in the throes of Prohibition. And so it said that on this date back in 1923, they dumped about 1,000 gallons of captured alcohol into the Salt River. Now, they had talked about how they were even able to light it on fire. There was so much liquor in the river. And they even had a little song. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all over the house, not an eggnog was stirring, no chance for a louse. So there you go, as we get ready for Thanksgiving. Now, as we get ready to go into party mode, it is National Cashew Day. So even though it's not a true nut because it doesn't really develop a hard shell around it like other nuts like hazelnuts or walnuts do, it's still a very popular party gift. So, have some, enjoy them. You might even want to share them with some cranberries. Cranberries are grown all over, kind of in the Northeast, through Massachusetts, New Jersey, Washington, Wisconsin, which is interesting because Wisconsin produces over half of the cranberries in the country, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now, it is also National Fabioccio Day, because that is honoring a mathematician who, from the Middle Ages, started a sequence of numbers that goes 1, 1, 2, 3 is the start of it. Hence why today is the day they've chosen. Now, those Fabioccio numbers also correspond to how computers store data. So it was quite influential and important for its day. It is also National Jukebox Day. Now, it's like, I grew up, it's like, the laundromat had a great jukebox. The bar down the street had a great jukebox. Even today, jukeboxes are still around. They may be a little more fancier and less mechanical than some of those classic Wurlitzer numbers or some of those other versions that we used to grow up with. But it's so much fun to see what different bars curate and put in their jukebox. Even though it's a digital jukebox nowadays, you can still curate it. Although I do have friends that still have those jukeboxes that play 45s. So, today is a day where we're celebrating all of those. It is also National Tie One On because, lots of folks around the country are tying on an apron because they're getting ready to cook an amazing meal for so many of their friends and family. So it is also National Espresso Day because if you're up late dealing with your turkey, making sure it's basted and on schedule for your lunchtime, you might need a little bit of espresso, some caffeine to make your day. Back in the day, it just meant it was an individual cup of coffee. Today, it's a little fancier. And, it's still an individual cup of coffee, but it's the basis of so many coffee drinks today. So, wow, what an amazing day. And now, if this is your first time watching, you might wonder, well, what are we going to do? So we always have a bit of trivia, as well as some Arizona music history, Little Arizona, as well as we do indeed have a beverage and an amazing guest tonight. And we'll get to that in just a few minutes. But first, you might wonder, who is that man and why is he on my screen? Well, my name is Marshall Shore. I got to Arizona almost 23 years ago to the day. And I was working in a beautiful Carnegie building, but I decided to trade all that snow and that slush in for something much more manageable, that being a little library in South Central Phoenix, and promptly moved into a 1956 ranch right here in Central Phoenix. And it's pretty much a time capsule. As you can see, there's what my kitchen looks like today. Lots of buttercream yellow tile with matching appliances that still work. Although I had to replace one of the burners recently on my stovetop, but it still works. And, as soon as we got here, all we kept hearing about how there was no history here. But, every time I went for a bike ride, a car trip, an adventure anywhere, I kept running across so many amazing people, places, and stories. And that's really what kind of got me going, doing exactly what we're doing tonight. Now, there also are that post-war boom. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or maybe they passed through on the way to somewhere else. After World War II, they were moving here in huge numbers, looking for a new way of life, which they found, and forever changing Arizona. Now, I'm also called the hip historian because I get to play around with a lot of Arizona history. And so actually coming up this weekend, I'm going to be down in Bisbee at the historic Greenway House as we are doing dinner and a seance, which is our second one. That's going to be quite intriguing. So I'll let you all know some of what happens. Also, the day after Thanksgiving, my friend Danetta, who actually was a guest on several months ago, her film festival, A Night of Misfit Films, takes off on Friday night and runs through Sunday evening at the Alwyn House. So that's going to be lots of fun to check out, as well as coming up next month, the 13th year of Festivus. Festivus for the rest of us. And, I've been involved since that very first year, and so it's interesting because I've been selling things since then. This year, I'm going to be Hip Santa. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure and come on out and check that out. It's going to be an amazing event as always. So lots of fun coming up there. And also on Friday, I'm so excited. So Arizona Unzipped, the tickets go live for that on Friday morning. Now the event's not until March 24th. But oh my gosh, that's going to be so much fun as we basically take a romp through Arizona history, through storytelling and burlesque. So that's right. Yeah, it's an educational burlesque show at the Orpheum. So how cool is that? So I see some of you, Jim and Karen, have already found the chat session. So feel free to chat in that. You can also reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, email, or even through my website. It's all Hip Historian Connected. All right. So we do have a beverage this evening, and let's see if Silent Bob, my bartender, is ready. All right. So tonight we are doing a double pecan pie beer from Wilderness Brewing Company. And they make this big can ready right there for you. Oh, and I poured it really badly. All right, we're going to have to wait for that because nobody wants any of that right now. So we're just going to let it sit there. But you know what I do love? So this beer has elements of chocolate. It's got all kinds of flavors kind of lurking around. Ribbons of sweet caramel, a dash of alcohol. Shockingly. I'm sure you're all shocked by that. And let's see. Oh. So there you can go. It's double pecan pie. Now they also have a single pecan pie, but I'm intrigued to try the double pecan pie to see how decadent that is. So, okay, there's still too much foam. So we're going to wait on that. And so we are going to do a little Arizona dive. And so we are going to talk about a little town called Tolleson. Now, Tolleson was founded back in 1912 by Walter and Althea Tolleson. It was incorporated back in 1929, and they took and opened the 10-mile store, which was the first stagecoach stop on the way to Yuma. They reopened it, and it became the nucleus for their little town called Tolleson. Now, it was interesting. In order to sell land, he basically scheduled chartered trains and actually gave away gold dollar pieces to folks who were holding a lucky number. Now, in the 50s, it became known as the vegetable center of the world for all the agriculture that was going on there. Now, if you make your way out there today, you will find Phoenix International Raceway, which has been open since 1964, is currently owned and operated by NASCAR. And so it's just moments away from Tolleson, and they host all kinds of NASCAR events, IndyCar, all kinds of sports car championships are held right there. You can also make your way to Estrella Mountain Regional Park, which became a regional park back in 1962. Before that, it was just a park for the community, and it remains largely pristine desert. So you don't see much of that here in Central Phoenix, but you can go to Estrella Mountain Regional Park and find some of that. Now, one of the things that's interesting is when we talk about like Estrella Park, the history doesn't go back to just that 1962 or that 1912, which is also happens to be Statehood Day, but it really talks about how the Hohokam or the Hogum Indian culture was there because of all that water. They had a canal system like just here in Phoenix, so there were hundreds and hundreds of miles of canals. And so that's pretty much who started out in that area being agriculture. And so not shockingly enough, that agriculture continued, and there's still a lot of agriculture going on in that area today. Now, if you go out, they also have Paseo de Luchas, and so that is a collection of public art installations, as well as they hold a Latin jazz, a mariachi festival, an Easter celebration, lots of music going on all year long. So be sure to check that out and go enjoy Tolleson. All right. So now we get ready for lots of fun. I am going to bring on my friend Stanna. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get rid of my bartender because no one needs to see him now because he poured me a really bad beer. Well, hello, Stanna.
Hi, Marshall.
I am so happy you can join us. Now, I want to let people know that so you are a lawyer working and living in Scottsdale and also transgendered, as we basically just come off of Transgendered Awareness Week. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Marshall. And by the way, thank you for all you're doing for Arizona and specifically for Arizona's LGBTQ community.
It's such, I mean, there's so many amazing stories to tell about Arizona. So I'm just so happy that we're getting a chance to share your story as well.
Thank you for having me this evening.
So, okay, so we always do a little bit of trivia. And with that trivia, our guest kind of tells it, or basically they create the trivia. And so it tells stories that they want to tell about their slice of Arizona. And so what we do is I think we've got 11 questions this week, some true, false, a couple multiple choice. And so if you don't know the answer, just guess, because especially with that true or false, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. And so then the beautiful thing is we're going to come back and we're going to tell you the stories of those answers. And that's where I think the fun is really going to happen, as we get to hear about all kinds of goings on around the state as well as Scottsdale. So did I miss anything, Stanna? Do you have anything else you'd like to add, throw in there?
No, I was just hoping that you were going to say that the winner of the prize for the trivia question is going to receive a brand new car.
Possibly if I do have some matchboxes.
Okay.
So there is a chance that somebody could win a brand new car. It's really small. So yeah, we don't have Oprah's budget, so we're not doing anything quite like that.
Maybe one of the beer samples from your bartender this evening.
Oh, and actually, thank you for reminding me, because look, there's no foam now, so we can try double pecan pie. Wow.
Yum.
That really does. You can taste the pecans in there. Wow. That's quite surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
It sounds delicious. I'm envious over here without one of those.
Well, next time I see you, we can change that. How's that?
Okay, good.
All right. So now people keep track of the trivia. Some folks will do it in the chat session. Some folks have like a special notebook they keep their track of their scores in. However you want to do it, you go right ahead. No shame, no guilt, whatever makes you happy. All right. So our first question is, the Arizona ethics rules for judges expressly prohibit Arizona judges from engaging in bias prejudice based on gender identity. Is that true or false? Oh, I have a feeling there's a story there.
There is.
All right. Question 2. The State Bar of Arizona formally supported Stanna Slater's 2015 effort before the Arizona Supreme Court to expand the judicial ethics to protect transgendered people from discrimination in state court proceedings. So is that true or false? All right. Question 3. The SBA never had any openly gay state bar presidents. Is that true or false? See what I mean about that 50-50 chance of getting it right? So there you go. All right. Question 4. In what year did the lawyer ethics rules in Arizona begin prohibiting lawyers from engaging in bias and prejudice based on sexual orientation and gender identity? Was it A, 1989, B, 1995, C, 2002, or D, 2014? All right. Which one of those years do you think that was? All right. Question 5, that halfway point. The city of Scottsdale has recognized a transgendered woman as a diversity champion for volunteer work performed on the behalf of the transgender community. True or false? All right. Question 6. Arizona Foothills Magazine That glossy that some people get to their house, you can pick up at, I know you can get it at AJ's, all kinds of places you can pick up Arizona Foothills. Now, have they featured a transgendered woman in their annual showcase of women who move the valley? Is that true or false? All right. Question 7. The city of Scottsdale has an appointed LGBTQ liaison. True or false? All right. Question 8. Arizona has a state law that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. True or false? All right, question 9. The city of Scottsdale has enacted an ordinance that protects people who are gay or transgender from discrimination. True or false? Question 10. How many Arizona cities have expanded their anti-discrimination ordinances to protect people who identify as gay or transgender? Is it A2, B5, C7, or D10? All right, and then we have a bonus question. The city of Scottsdale provides its employees and their dependents with health care benefits that includes transgender health care. Is that true or false? All right, so while you're all sitting there locking in those final answers, we are going to take a little bit of an Arizona music break. And we are going to talk about Bob Corritor. Now, Bob is a musician, DJ, club owner, producer, does all kinds of things with Arizona music. He has hosted a show on KJZZ since the mid-'80s called Those Lowdown Blues. He moved here back in 1981 from Illinois and has produced records with folks like Big Pete Pearson, Louisiana Red. And then in 91, he opened up the Rhythm Room, which is kind of a no-frills venue that shows a lot of blues. But I've seen all kinds of, I've seen surf punk, a little bit of everything there. So it's a great music venue to see a wide variety of not just blues, but all kinds of music. So if you haven't been to the Rhythm Room, check out their website and see. Now, Bob has also been inducted not only into the Arizona Blues Hall of Fame, but also into the Arizona Music and Entertainment Hall of Fame as well. So check out the Rhythm Room. All right. So now who's ready for some answers? I know I am. Oh my gosh. Okay. So question 1. The Arizona ethics rules for judges expressly prohibit Arizona judges from engaging in bias, prejudice based on gender identity. And that is false. So, Stanna, what does all of that mean?
So, Marshall, back in 2015, I was chairing the Arizona State Bar's Committee for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. And at that time, there had been quite a bit of work done to advance the interests of those who are gay. The ethics rules for lawyers and for judges had been updated with respect to sexual orientation, but, and also, well, the ethics rule with respect to lawyers had been updated to also protect gender identity. In other words, lawyers were prohibited from engaging in discrimination against someone based on their sexual orientation and gender or gender identity in the course of representing one of their clients. While that rule had been in place for a number of years, applicable to lawyers, prohibiting them from engaging in discrimination, by 2015, when I was chairing the State Bar's Committee for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, the judge's ethics rule did not expressly protect people who are transgender from discrimination, either by judges, their staff, or anyone appearing in their courtroom. So this was a project that I thought should be taken on by the state bar in order to, if nothing else, make the ethics rule that applies to judges conform to the ethics rule that applies to lawyers. I mean, after all, if lawyers are having to abide by a certain standard, shouldn't the judges also abide by that same standard? So I set out with the help of some great Arizona lawyers who were part of our committee. We call it the SOGI Committee for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. And we initially asked the state bar leaders to take on the task of asking the Arizona Supreme Court to update the judicial ethics rule to conform to the lawyer ethics rule. Well, as you can imagine, in 2015, things were pretty precarious for the LGBTQ community. We hadn't even yet seen any advance in terms of marriage equality. So the state bar, which had gone through a lot in its history over the previous 20 years, at least 13 years, to advance the interests of those who identify as gay, really didn't want to take on this battle. Even as simple and as logical as the battle seems, just make judges abide by the same standards that the lawyers are bound by. And so the state bar did not pursue that, and they advised me politely and diplomatically that that was not something they wanted to pursue. Luckily, I had some great colleagues on the SOGI committee, and a couple who I want to give a shout out to in particular are Rick Marley and Lou Goodman. We, as well as several other members of the SOGI committee, and then other individuals who were not on the committee or had been previously on the committee, all agreed that we would file a petition before the Arizona Supreme Court to ask in our names that the judicial ethics rule be updated to include gender identity as a protected class. So Rick, Lou, and I went to the state bar's leaders and we explained to them what we were going to do, and that we still wanted their support. Even though they weren't willing to file the petition in the name of the state bar, we were going to do that ourselves. And we told them that what we wanted and expected was that once we filed the petition and the opportunity came along for anyone and everyone who has an opinion on whether the petition should be granted or denied, we would ask that the state bar file a petition saying we support this petition. Even though we didn't file it as the state bar, this is a petition filed by someone else. The state bar supports this petition, and fortunately the state bar was with us and they agreed to do that. And in the end, the state bar did in fact support the petition filed in my name specifically. Actually, it was my former name, my birth name, Jeffrey Slater, along with a number of my attorney colleagues who had put their name on the petition as well to support it. Well, what ended up happening is that the Arizona Supreme Court denied the petition, which was on the surface very disheartening, because what it meant was that they weren't going to add the protected class of gender identity to the list of protected classes that the judges in Arizona are not supposed to discriminate against. But in the process of denying the petition, the Arizona Supreme Court qualified its denial by saying the judges in Arizona are not to engage in bias or prejudice, and that the rule, with all of its listed classes for protection, is illustrative only and is not exhaustive. And in legal jargon, what that means is even though we, the Supreme Court, are deciding to not add gender identity to the list of protected classes, we're saying that that list of protected classes is not exclusive, and that just because we are not adding gender identity as an expressly protected class, that nonetheless cannot be a basis for judges to engage in discrimination, bias, or prejudice. So in the end, it was a win, I believe, for our transgender community, because that order that came from the petition that we filed could be cited as basis for informing any judge who might run afoul of the spirit of the judicial rule. They should not engage in discrimination against transgender people, even if the rule remains as it reads, without gender identity specifically listed as a protected class.
Oh, that's so interesting that's kind of how it came out. That it is not like specified, but it's a larger umbrella.
Yes, and the key, I think, is that the court specifically said, and they could have just said, we deny this petition, but they said, we admonish judges that they are not to engage in bias or prejudice. Furthermore, the list of protected classes are illustrative only and not exhaustive.
Right.
So while the traditional classes that are protected are listed in the rule, and they include all the ones we're familiar with, the court was saying that's not the end of the story when it comes to judges being prohibited from engaging in bias or prejudice. So it really did leave our community an open door, right, to argue that we're protected. The Arizona Supreme Court has recognized us and has essentially said that, even though we didn't have the success we were looking for in terms of having a petition granted that would have put the words gender identity expressly into the judicial ethics rule.
Wow. All right. So question 2, the State Bar of Arizona formally supported the Stanna Slater 2015 effort before the Supreme Court. So this is that. Is that case?
Yes.
Okay. So it basically, again, so it was not exhaustive, that list. So, wow.
And in this question, which pertains to the State Bar formally supporting the petition that I had filed along with my colleagues, it's a true statement. Now, the backstory is that my colleagues and I had wanted the State Bar to take the lead on this, to file it in the name of the State Bar and not in the name of one attorney or a dozen attorneys who have this interest in mind. Our goal was to try to have the State Bar, with all of its prestige, file the petition asking that gender identity be added as a protected class to the judicial ethics rule. Again, as I mentioned a moment ago, the State Bar was not willing to take on that controversial task. And so they declined the request that I and my committee had made of the State Bar to do that. which then resulted in my colleagues and I, again, a shout out to Rick Marley and Lou Goodman for all the help they gave me, and a number of other attorneys as well. We came up with a strategy to file the petition in our names and in the names of our other colleagues who were on board with us, and then simply ask the state bar to put their weight behind it through the means of having the state bar simply comment in support of the petition we had already filed.
Okay.
And that the state bar did.
Wow. Very cool. All right. So the State Bar Association has never had an openly gay state bar president.
That is.
Ah.
We are a fortunate jurisdiction to enjoy having had Amelia Kramer as our state bar president. She's a wonderful lady, an open lesbian. She's done an enormous amount of work over her career, not just here in Arizona, but nationally. Her curriculum vitae should be reviewed by anyone who's part of the community and other people as well, because it's quite impressive what she has accomplished. She worked in her day job as the chief deputy Pima County attorney, which involved an enormous amount of work and challenge, if not arguably even danger, because of all the issues that a Pima County deputy attorney would have to deal with. But on top of her daytime job, she's been a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ community and took her work in that regard all the way up to the position of president of the Arizona State Bar. And that was in the year 2012 to 2013. And I'm thrilled and grateful that I was able to meet her in the lead up to her service as the state bar president and work closely with her on a number of projects that were important to both of us and to our community.
All right. All right. Question 4. In what year did the lawyer ethics rules in Arizona begin prohibiting lawyers from engaging in bias prejudice based on sexual orientation and gender identity? And it was 2002.
2002, and it was thanks to Amelia Kramer in large part. Now, she had lots of great people helping her and working hard with her, but she led the charge to update the lawyer ethics rules so that our community would be protected from discrimination by lawyers in their practice.
All right. Question 5. The city of Scottsdale has recognized a transgender woman as a diversity champion for volunteer work performed on behalf of the transgender community. And that is indeed true.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud of my hometown, Scottsdale. I've lived here for over 30 years. It is a very conservative city, as everyone knows, but the city of Scottsdale deserves a lot of recognition for the willingness of its leaders to reach out to the LGBTQ community. And in this way, back in 2016, the city of Scottsdale recognized me as a diversity champion based on work I had done up to that point on behalf of the LGBTQ community and the transgender community in particular. Now, the award is one that the city of Scottsdale gives every year to somebody or there may be 2 or 3 individuals who are recognized in any given year. And it's done by the city through a nonprofit called Community Celebrating Diversity. And that organization is managed by many of the representatives from the city of Scottsdale, and it carries the dream of Martin Luther King that there would be equality for everyone, and that we would be all judged based on the content of our character and not by something else. And I don't want to brag about me being selected. I want to brag about the city of Scottsdale in taking the risk and going so far as to recognize me for this award in 2016. It really speaks to how the city of Scottsdale is leaning forward progressively and leading the way for Arizona cities in many ways, some of which we'll probably talk about further.
Shockingly enough, we will. And also, so I always end on a video. And so tonight we're going to end on the video that they showed in 2016 when you won that award.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, oh no, I mean, it was so well done. So yeah, so happy to do that. All right. So question 6. Arizona Foothills Magazine has featured a transgender woman in its annual showcase of women who move the valley.
The answer is true.
Indeed.
And fortunately for me, it was yours truly who they selected in 2016 as one of a number of, I believe it was 8 women that year who they believed had moved the valley through the efforts that each of the recognized women had put forth in some form of volunteer or nonprofit capacity.
Right. So no, I mean, what an excellent thing for, because Arizona Foothills, I mean, they are quite progressive and showcase so much of the valley.
Yes, and they, one of the things that some people might notice about Arizona Foothills Magazine is that it's very much about the affluent lifestyle of the valley. And many of their features will showcase the finer living that hopefully we all can achieve and enjoy here living in the metro area. And so it's a publication that ends up reaching a lot of people who are very affluent and who might be quite conservative in their views. So for them to have chosen a transgender woman as one of their selectees for Women Who Move the Valley in 2016 really says a lot about how broad spectrum Arizona Foothills Magazine really is.
Right.
It covers the good life, the affluent life, the luxuries of living in the foothills in the Valley of the Sun,
Right.
but they also make a point to recognize when someone is trying to help an underserved community and is themselves a member of that community.
Mm-hmm. All right, question 7. The city of Scottsdale has an appointed LGBTQ liaison.
True. And once again, it's yours truly. I am the current LGBTQ liaison for the city of Scottsdale. I've been in that appointed position for 5.5 years. And I had a tough act to follow because before I became the LGBTQ liaison, that position was filled by Scottsdale's first LGBTQ liaison, who is none other than David Simmons. And we could talk for a while about David Simmons and all he's accomplished and for our community. I will say right now he's currently serving as the chief of staff for the mayor of Scottsdale. And in that position, he has an enormous amount of responsibility. But lucky for our community, he has the opportunity to advocate on behalf of our community to the mayor of Scottsdale. And so I consider David a dear friend, and I'm grateful for all he's done. And it was an honor to follow him in the position of LGBTQ liaison at the city of Scottsdale, though it was an undertaking that I felt ill prepared for and very anxious and nervous to embark upon, because David had filled it and had done such a great job while he was in the position.
And you have definitely risen to that challenge and meeting it right on.
Well, it's great having David at the city with me.
Well, exactly. I can only imagine that that's a help as well, to have someone who's also so supportive.
Yes.
So, all right. So question 8, Arizona has a state law that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity.
That is a big, loud, resounding false. We do not have a state law that protects the LGBTQ community. It is a really unfortunate aspect of our great state that our legislature has not taken the step to expand its non-discrimination law to include sexual orientation and gender identity. That is something that has been attempted by way of bills having been submitted to the legislature in recent years. And in more recently than not, it has actually been an effort that has been bipartisan by both Democrats and Republicans. Unfortunately, however, that effort has still not made its way into law. And so it's an unfortunate cloud on our great state. Hopefully it will be something that changes soon. We can only be hopeful. There's a lot of work that has to be done, however, to make that happen.
Indeed, there is. All right. So question 9, the city of Scottsdale has enacted an ordinance that protects people who are gay or transgender from discrimination.
That is a resounding true. And I'm so proud to say that about my hometown, Scottsdale. That is an expansion of their non-discrimination ordinance that occurred last year in April of 2021. And so this was the result of years of hard work that had been started probably in large part by one community, Angela Huey, and a lot of our colleagues who have worked with Angela over the years. The biggest push that I'm aware of for this effort was back in 2015. It had a lot of momentum, but unfortunately stalled and was put on the back burner by the city of Scottsdale. It sat there where it languished for several years. And fortunately, I was able to become the LGBTQ liaison in 2017 and begin trying to persuade leaders at the city that this was something that should be reviewed. The city leaders decided, particularly under the leadership of the new mayor, David Ortega, that this was a priority they wanted to pursue when they came into office in 2021. In the lead up, one community, Angela Huey, many of us were persuading them or trying to advocate that this was something the city should do. One of the most significant factors in all of this, though, came from the Scottsdale Human Relations Commission, which is a group of volunteers who are appointed by the city to serve for the purpose of reviewing issues of human relations and advising the city council on those issues. In the lead up to the 2021 enactment or expansion of Scottsdale's ordinance, the Human Relations Commission, under the leadership of Janice Shimakubo, set out to make it a point that Scottsdale's non-discrimination ordinance be specifically expanded to protect people who are gay or transgender, and do so in all areas of public accommodation, housing, and employment. And the wonderful individuals on the Scottsdale Human Relations Commission who took that on worked it diligently and with diplomacy and wisdom and patience, as well as tenacity. And in their effort, supported by one community, Angela Huey, myself, and many others, the effort was deemed by the Scottsdale City Council, including the mayor, to be a priority and was enacted by unanimous vote in April of last year. And so today we enjoy in Scottsdale LGBTQ non-discrimination protection. And I'm so thrilled about my hometown having done that.
Indeed. All right, so question 10, how many Arizona cities have expanded their anti-discrimination ordinance to protect people who identify as gay or transgender? And it's 10?
A whopping 10, although I wish it was more. The sad truth is we need city ordinances all around the state in light of the fact, as I mentioned a moment ago, the state legislature refuses in its majority to act by passing a state law that prohibits discrimination. Fortunately, 10 cities in Arizona have stepped up through their councils and mayors to take on the task of providing the protections within their city limits, what the state legislature and its majority cannot or won't do.
Right.
And those 10 cities are Phoenix, Tucson, Flagstaff, Tempe, Sedona, Winslow, Mesa, Scottsdale, Tolleson, and Glendale. And I give a shout out to all those cities. They're great Arizona cities, and they have our back. And I'm so grateful that they do.
Indeed. And hopefully more cities will be added to that as time goes on.
You know, there seems to be safety in numbers and more confidence that builds.
Actually, I would believe that, right? I mean, it's like now there's more cities, so it's not as such an outlier for a city to do that.
I'm hoping we'll see a snowball effect now.
All right. So our last question, the city of Scottsdale provides its employees and their dependents with healthcare benefits that includes transgender health care.
Yes, it's true. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. It's wonderful. You know, this is a real important step that the city of Scottsdale has taken. You know, not a lot of people won't necessarily know that the city of Scottsdale provides its employees and their dependents with this transgender health benefits the city seems to receive more notoriety and publicity for things like the non-discrimination ordinance, which understandably it would. Providing employees and their dependents with transgender health benefits not only doesn't necessarily receive a lot of positive attention and publicity, if anything, it probably actually receives negative attention from individuals who may think that their health care costs more in light of the fact that the city provides this benefit to the few who are transgender. The fact that the city did this is a really strong indication that the city of Scottsdale stands with the LGBTQ community in general and the transgender community specifically. And this development occurred in 2018. So it's been around now for 4 years. I wish it had been around longer, but hey, it's great to have it as of 2018. And again, I can't say enough about my hometown and their leaders for having the courage to step up and provide this benefit to those of their employees or their dependents who happen to be transgender.
You know, honestly, I have to commend you. I mean, I love how you keep saying hometown, and that you have discovered your authentic self in your hometown and stayed and become an advocate for your community.
Well, thank you, Marshall. You know, this is important to me. It's my life. It's my heart. I think of what prompted me to step out over a decade ago and begin all my efforts in advocacy for the LGBTQ community, with a focus specifically on the transgender community. And I'll tell you, it was the beautiful transgender women I knew early in the new millennium whose lives were so much harder than they should be by virtue of the way our society then looked at and treated transgender women. It broke my heart. It even angered me. And I decided 20 years ago, I was going to find a way to fight for them so that hopefully someday something could change so that they could work normal jobs and be the beautiful women they are and not be pushed away and told that they're wrong and forced into all kinds of uncomfortable situations, including the judgment and the ostracizing. So anyway, it's been a joy to me over the course of 20 years to see a goal of mine and a dream of mine to come true, where transgender women now have protection from discrimination in my hometown, Scottsdale. And if they work for the city or they're a dependent of someone who works for the city, they have transgender health benefits. And so it thrills me that we have seen progress in the 20 years that I've been looking at this and wishing things would change for the better. And so it's with great pride and relief that I share some of my story about some of the things that are happening here in Arizona, and specifically here in Scottsdale.
So, Stanna, if I can ask about your chosen name, Stanna, is there a story behind that?
As a matter of fact, yes. When I was growing up, my mother told my brothers and me that she had always hoped to have a daughter, and that if she had, she would have named her Stanna Michelle. This was a name that she had, the name Stanna was one she had encountered back in the early 60s when she was a young officer's wife at Fort Hood, Texas. And one of the other officers' wives happened to have the name Stanna. And my mother loved the name and thought, I'm going to name my daughter Stanna and make her middle name Michelle. Well, she ended up having 4 children, none of whom she gave that name to. But when I decided to transition, I resolved that that would be the name that I would carry. And of course, it's now my legal name.
Wow, that's such a great story.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I asked.
I wish that it had bought me some brownie points with my mother, but she's a very conservative, religious lady who grew up on a farm in rural Oklahoma. And unfortunately, she was not nearly as excited about me taking the name Stanna Michelle as I am, or as I had hoped she would be. But that's part of the challenge. And there are a lot of transgender women and transgender men out there who are living a similar challenge. And if they're listening, I just want to encourage them to stay strong. You're not alone. Your parents may not embrace the name you have taken on, but don't let that stop you from being your true, authentic self, and in doing so, helping somebody else.
And and I love that it's like what you could like in your hometown, how they support healthy communities, not just in one type of community, but across a broad spectrum of their communities. So I always like to end by asking folks how they did on the trivia, and knowing full well that it's like, it's not about how much you knew coming into it, but all the great stories that Stanna has shared about how change has been coming to Scottsdale, as well as there are 10 other cities that now have that anti-discrimination policy. I think Tucson was one of the first.
I think that's
in the 70s. So to do that, Stanna, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story and how you are making the world a better place for all of us.
It's my pleasure, Marshall. I'm just one small person who gained the benefit of the hard work of others. Becky Allison, who's an Arizona cardiologist, perhaps retired now. She has done so much for the transgender community in Arizona and nationally. She's just one of many individuals whose name I could mention, who paved a way before me. I don't feel like I've done all that much. I wish I could do more. But one thing's for sure, I saw a need and I saw some opportunities along the way. There were unusual opportunities, and I rolled up my sleeves, got in there, and tried to make a difference. I wish I could have done more. I'm still working at it. I hope I can do more. But there are a lot of great transgender men and women, as well as our gay brothers and lesbian sisters, who are fighting the good fight and trying to help people to just be able to live their lives in their authentic selves. And I'm grateful for that. And want to say again to you, Marshall, thank you for what you're doing as Arizona's hip historian and pulling together the stories of what is happening in Arizona. This is an exciting state. There are a lot of challenges here, but there are a lot of exciting things happening. And your ability to go out and find the stories of a lot of great individuals, Arizonans, LGBTQ community members who have made a difference, perhaps in their own small way, but in the collective effort, it ends up helping to make Arizona the great state that it is.
Right. And even in light of certain issues that have happened recently, like in Colorado, where it was an ally, you had so many different members of the community coming together to minimize the harm, the risk could have been, the loss could have been much larger than it was in Colorado. But because of so many members of our community, including those allies, that was stopped.
You're absolutely right. And you bring up a great point that I believe deserves mentioning. I can't say enough thanks to our allies, the straight allies, the ones who may not be gay or transgender, but for some reason, perhaps they have a family member that they care about who is gay or transgender. They've decided to step up and say, these individuals deserve their civil rights and they deserve to be treated like anyone else. And I honestly believe that the battle to win our acceptance as members of the LGBTQ community ultimately will be won largely based on the efforts of our straight allies who stood up for us.
Indeed. Well, Stanna, thank you so much. Have a delightful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too, Marshall.
And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, we're going to have that pecan beer.
And indeed we will. I will make sure that happens.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh. That was, Stanna, thank you so much for sharing your story. And so as we get ready to close out, we always have a little from the vault. And so kind of keeping with today's theme, I wanted to highlight another person who has military service. And so that would be Monica Helms. So I'm sure you have all seen the trans flag, that blue, pink, and white flag that has flown across the globe. What you might not realize is that was designed right here in Arizona. And so Monica Helms was the person who designed that. And she was living here in Phoenix at the time she does, as her and her wife are now in Atlanta. And I think they may have just adopted. And so the fact that she is also has been a transgender activist. She also is a veteran of the Navy. She served on a submarine. So, she did yeoman's work on creating that to support folks across the planet that so many people have been flying. That original flag that she designed is sitting in the Smithsonian Museum as a testament to how important our history is and making sure that it is preserved. So again, thank you all so much for joining us as we get a little bit of history about our transgender community. And so now you'll always see why I always suggest, you want to share because on Facebook, because we are having so much fun and learning about so much Arizona, which we might not know about otherwise. Next week, we have Victor Avila on as our special guest. So that should be really exciting. So looking forward to hearing from Victor. And remember, please feel free to reach out to me. I love to hear from you all. And if you have questions, stories, suggestions, we're coming around to the fact where the end of the year is coming up, not far away. And we're going to be starting another year of Arizona History Happy Hour in 2023. And so please let me know if you have folks you think that their stories need to be heard, and we can see what we can do with that. So thank you all so much. I always want to give a Chris out to Chris and Cole, who did that great video, and PJ for always suggesting and helping educate me on beverages, including double pecan pie beer. Because who knew it could be that creamy and smooth and everything else. So as we get ready to say goodnight, I do want to show that video with Stanna as she won the award from City of Scottsdale. So here we go.
Stanna Michelle Slater is a Scottsdale resident and business owner who has spent the last 7 years promoting diversity both in Scottsdale and throughout the state of Arizona. For this reason, she was nominated and selected for the 2016 MLK Diversity Champion Awards. Stanna Slater's focus has been to bring awareness to and advocate for those who identify as gay or transgender. Stanna has pursued these goals largely through her work as a Scottsdale attorney at the law offices of Jeffrey Slater, PC, which Stanna founded in Scottsdale in 1999. Stanna herself is a transgendered woman whose birth name is Jeffrey Slater. Stanna's work in education and advocacy has highlighted the fact that neither the state of Arizona nor the vast majority of its cities provide any specific legal protections for those who are gay or transgender. Stanna's efforts to promote diversity in Scottsdale and beyond have been numerous. In Scottsdale, Stanna helped to establish a center for gay and transgendered youth by serving on the board of directors at a nonprofit organization known as 1 in 10. The work of 1 in 10 involves helping gay and transgendered youth achieve self-awareness, education, and empowerment. In extreme cases, this includes providing high school dropouts and homeless youth with alternative schooling and housing. In Scottsdale, Stanna has also provided public awareness that supports broader efforts to explore the need for a non-discrimination ordinance protecting gay and transgendered people. Beyond our city limits, yet still with the intent to benefit her fellow Scottsdale residents, Stanna has strived for reforms in Arizona's judiciary. As a 6-year member and eventual appointed chair of the Arizona State Bar's Committee on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, Stanna worked to educate the statewide legal community on the plight of Arizonans who identify as gay or transgender. This work included efforts to update ethics rules applicable to lawyers and judges for the purpose of ending discrimination in legal proceedings. Stanna's general contributions to Scottsdale have also included 13 years of service as a commissioned officer in the United States Army Reserve. She devoted 3 of these years to Arizona's Army National Guard. During her Army service, she received airborne paratrooper training and was awarded the Army Commendation Medal. She was honorably discharged in 1999 at the rank of captain. For these reasons, Stanna Michelle Slater is a 2016 MLK Diversity Champion.